Let us talk about the 10 classes in Lords of the Fallen. That way I can help you figure out which class suits your style of gameplay and combat the best. That way you don't need to be stuck in the character creation screen for like 2.5 hours feeling depressed because the weekend is already ending, the end of the Sunday, and the week is already starting and you didn't even start the game. You know, everyone knows that feeling. So the first class is the Blackfeather Ranger. This is the cheetah archetype, right? This is the guy that starts the combat from afar, aiming into the mob's heads for critical damage. That doesn't mean that you cannot engage in close combat, okay? Because you're gonna start with an axe, a bow, oak arrows, poison arrows, light shield, and medium armor. But you need to be careful. You're not going to start the game with a huge metallic armor and a huge guts sword breaking everyone's posture and not be interrupted while performing an attack. You are a ranger. What stats should you focus on in the game? Agility is the primary stat. Every bow and small weapons, they scale better with agility. But remember, this is a Souls-like game. You will be able to have many hybrid builds, so you can invest a little bit into Radiance or a little bit into Inferno or Umbral. You're going to learn about that throughout this video. You can create many options of builds that will indeed adapt to your style of gameplay. And don't forget to invest in Vitality. Vitality is the base stat for every RPG game. What is the note from the developer? Picking up targets from afar on the move, landing headshots in this type of melee focused game will always be satisfying. Especially landing critical bow hits on the bosses, hitting their weak points, which are otherwise unreachable most of the time by melee. Aside from this, playing a cunning woodsman from the frozen waste feels like an apex predator on the prowl. Please share with me what class are you going to play in Lords of the Fallen. What is your inspiration for your builds? What is the style of gameplay or combat that you enjoy the most? Let us talk in the comments. Let us move on to the Dark Crusader. Guys, there's a reason why I don't like this class. I'm gonna share with you in a second, okay? This is the poster boy for the whole game. Why? The game is about a crusade for you to right the wrongings in Mournstead. So what is a better class to do that than a Dark Crusader, right? This class is melee focused, but you will have some radiant powers. For example, some healing buffs or some weapon buffs or some protective spells as well. What is your starting gear? You have like a Crusader great sword, a big sword. I love big swords for you to perform those big death blows. Crusader heavy armor and a rosary catalyst for you to cast those buffs that I mentioned. What stats should you focus throughout the game? Strength, of course, is the base attribute, okay, because melee damage is the main focus, but as I mentioned before, Radiance, it has a big role in this class as well, so you should invest a little bit into Radiance. And remember, in this case, in Lords of the Fallen, if you invest points into Strength, that means that you will be able to carry more, withstand a heavy load. And don't forget to invest points into Endurance and Stamina, because you know that if you perform a heavy attack with a heavy weapon, it takes a huge chunk of your stamina bar. Everyone knows this. What is the note from the developer? The Crusader is our poster boy, looks absolutely metal, and is by far the most lore appropriate character to crusade and right the wrongs in Mournstead. But there's one problem: you will only be able to play with this class if you purchase the deluxe edition. I get really pissed the fuck off because you're doing the whole marketing of the game focus on this character specifically, and you need to purchase the deluxe edition. It's a good strategy, I know, because I work with marketing as well, but it doesn't mean I enjoy that. But it's not my class. I won't get stressed about this. Orian Preacher. Mentioned before that the Dark Crusader was the best appropriate choice for the lore, but the most accurate choice is the Orian Preacher. This guy in here is like the evangelist, you know, the pious evangelist of the Orian Church. What is the Orian Church? Basically, you have like those entities, those divine entities. Horus in this case is God. So you will be the preacher. You will be the guy that will wipe out the evil in the land with your faith powers. Don't forget that you will start the game with a hammer, a light shield, a radiant catalyst, healing radiant spells, light armor, you know, small mana stone consumables. You need to understand that this class itself is a radiance class, you know, a faith class. So you have a lot of spells, a lot of lightning radiant spells as well that you need to cast from afar. Some of them you buff yourself or protect yourself with protective spells. And you cannot forget that you will start with a light armor. So I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but I don't know if someone comes to you with a huge sword and rips your chest out, I don't think that some cloth will help you out. I really don't. The hammer that you start in the beginning of the game, it's really like impactful. You have like those that ability to break posture as well, but you need to remember, like, you won't have a lot of protection in the beginning of the game. So what stats should you focus on in the beginning and throughout the game? So Radiance is the #1 priority. The fact that this is not a beginner friendly class for newcomers, but always remember to focus on Radiance if you want to do like the Paladin type of gameplay. Always remember to increase mana with the Radiance as well, vitality and strength. And always remember this game, like, you have areas in this game that the enemies will be extremely resistant to Radiance, or there will be areas in the game that the enemies will be extremely resistant to Infernal magic. Not all times will be easy, okay? So what is the note from the developer? Given how religion permeates all aspects of the game, the Preacher feels like the most lore-appropriate class, bringing justice to the heretics, redeeming the sentinels, and smiting the demonic back from whence they came. And then there's that majestic hat that they sport. In this case, you have that penitence, blind faith, sacrilege type of vibe that I really enjoy. Talked about the Orian Preacher. The Pyric Cultist is basically the evil version of that guy, you know? What do I mean by evil version? This guy, they worship the Udirangr. If you see the note from the developer, like with their mask made from human skin, these pyromancers are the anti-preacher, so to speak. Human cultists yearning for Udirangr's return, spreading its pestilent teachings in the human communities and emulating the opposition. Aside from being agents of chaos and destruction, they also revel in bloodletting, collecting hands and using them as catalysts. This is a very Lords of the Fallen kind of class, since the embracing of the unfettered power and the roguer wield is very satisfying and damning. Regarding the lore, this is the evil class, you know? Really evil class. I don't know how that will impact on the lore. The guy that you see and you cry. This is the guy in the lore that you will share dark histories of cannibalisms with your sons and telling him to be careful and not going out at night after 10 p.m. because this guy will probably be waiting to collect your hand and using as a catalyst for spells. What is your starting gear? A cultist staff pole arm, roguer catalyst, infernal orb spell, and medium armor. And a small mana stone consumable because you will use a lot of mana to cast your spells. Remember that I mentioned that this game will have areas with enemies that are resistant to different types of damage. In this case, in the beginning of the game, in the starting area of the game, you have a lot of enemies that are resistant to infernal magic, you know? I don't know if you understand how magic works in this case. You have like 3 types of magic. You have Radiance, which basically is faith from Elden Ring, you know. You have Infernal, fire, and Umbral. Umbral, it basically scales with Radiance and Infernal. You must always remember, there will be many enemies in this game that are resistant to all of these type of magic. And you will have like some elemental scaling damaging as well, like cold, poison. I enjoy making a build that will give me the possibility of applying different types of damage. For example, if I see a guy that is resistant to Radiance, I'll beat the shit out of him with my X that scales with strength, okay? What stats you need to focus on throughout the game with the Pyric Cultist? You need to focus a lot in Inferno, as I mentioned before, to boost those spells, and of course, having a lot of mana for you to have like resource to cast those. You won't start with the armor that sucks, you know, you have a medium armor, so you would have like that a good protection, not an excellent, but you have a good protection. There's a good thing in here that I really enjoy. Let us read this part of the class. Investing heavily into strength to wield the heavy devastating roguer weapons that have high stat requirements as well as weight. You will have some really badass roguer weapons. I imagine those huge hammers, those huge fire axes that will need some investments into strength. I really enjoy strength and magic builds. The fact that you have those specific roguer strength weapons makes me really happy. Let us move on to the Hallowed Knight. This guy is the sword and shield classic guy, okay? The quality build guy. It's really beginner friendly because everyone in a Souls game or a Souls-like game will enjoy a shield for protective purposes, right? It's really versatile. You have a fast attack rate in this case. The fact that this armor looks heavy as doesn't mean that it is. It is a medium armor by default. What is your starting gear here? A short sword, a knight shield, heavy armor, grenades, healing over time, and consumables. The grenade animation is really nice. If you play like third-person shooter games, you know that when you throw a grenade, you have that arc for you to see where the grenade is going to be thrown. I really enjoy that. What are the stats that you should focus on in the beginning of the game? Don't forget vitality, endurance as well, and stamina for you to have longer combos. If you want to go towards agility, you can like pick a spear or a halberd, but maybe you want to go in the strength path, you know, like picking up some larger and bigger swords or axes or hammers. As I mentioned before, you can indeed have hybrid builds in here. So if you suck in Souls-like games, and if you enjoy that classic sword and shield metallic armor class, this is the right class for you. Souls-like games or Soulsborne games, they have a love and hate relation. First, you need to get used to the hate for you to start loving the game. Always remember that. What is the note from the developer? This is the all-rounder, a jack of all trades. Great defenses, fast attacks, popular weapon. Tossing grenades is always good fun, as I mentioned before. The most popular archetype, the Errant Knight. Let us move on to the other version of the Hallowed Knight, which is the Partisan. This guy is basically a variant of the class that I just mentioned. He's like a Mournstead Knight champion. You will start the game with a flail, a knight shield, a crossbow, heavy armor, unripe berries for stamina regeneration. In this case, you're gonna start the game with the crossbow and a flail. Flails, usually in every RPG game, they scale better with dexterity or agility if you prefer. So this class will be the guy that you'll be able to have a safe distance from enemies, you know, shooting the crossbow. And don't forget, the fact that you have weapons that scale better with dexterity doesn't mean that you will start the game with weak defenses, okay? You will start the game with a really good amount of defense and protection. So I think if you like that flail knight character vibe, you know, that you will swipe the flail and beat the shit out of monsters, I think this is a good option for you. What is the note from the developer? Clad in chainmail, swinging flails and shooting crossbows, the Partisan is the skirmisher archetype, perfectly balanced with armor that is not as heavy as the Hallowed Knight. It reflects the fantasy of an effective duelist for all situations. So it's basically a variant. Let us move on to the next class, the Condemned. This guy is basically sadness. The definition of this guy is sadness itself. I mean, the guy uses the waste buckets that he has on their cells as a melee weapon. What can you say about this? You know, depression itself. What is your starting gear? A broken bucket fist weapon, throwing rocks, and light armor. If you see a huge paladin, gigantic paladin, coming right at you with immense armor and immense weapon, you see classes that they have like really gigantic swords or different salts or different powers or radiance powers or infernal powers, and you have a rock. How are you gonna cope with that, you know? You're gonna throw rocks at the paladin? Really? Sadness itself. But it's not all dark waters, okay? This class has one of the best features in the whole game. The Condemned has the lowest stats in the entire game. This is perfect for PvP purposes. You know, you will build the class from zero and you will define and choose the best stats for your build specifically. I did this. I have like 32 builds in Udirangr. You know what I do? I back up my saves, you know. In this case, I think you'll be able to back up your saves as well. And depending on all the weapons that you have and how can you respect your points, your stat points, you can indeed come up with a lot of builds and reinvest those points into the perfect build for every situation and for every style of PvP gameplay or, I don't know, PvE gameplay as well. No question, they have one of the most iconic looks and they are perfect for experts that are keen on optimizing their builds, the way I mentioned before. If the idea of starting with the worst class and thriving with it for bragging rights sounds appealing, then the Condemned is the class for you. But the Condemned is not the only class that will start with the lowest stats in the game. You have the Mournstead Infantry. If you think about a chess game, you have the pawns, right? In this case, you are the pawn. Weak as hell. You are basically the lowest rank in the infantry is you, okay? but you will start with the spear and a shield. So if you want to poke the enemies and have a good defense, this is a good class. Of course, you will start with really low damage, right? So you will start with the spear, a light shield, a heavy armor, throwing javelins, healing over time, and a consumable. You have a decent amount of defense, heavy armor. As I mentioned before, the Condemned is not the only class that you will be able to invest your points the way you feel like investing. I really enjoy the fact that you can start the game not with a waste bucket, but with a spear and a shield. I mean, I will probably choose this one instead of the Condemned. Note from the developer, this class is the infantry soldier archetype. Spear on the shoulder, small shield, poking at enemies from afar. The common type of medieval warrior that conquered the lands, poking at its enemies with spear and javelin. The common rank and file soldier rising above the status is another juicy medieval trope. I mean, if you want to start safe, or if you want to have a good class for PvP purposes, this is the right choice for you. Let us move on to the Exiled Stalker. This is the assassin class, you know, that really careful, fast, close range and running away type of class. You will start the game with 2 daggers, a medium stalker armor, throwing daggers, and poison salts. What is this poison salts that I'm mentioning? You'll be able to apply poison onto your weapons with the salt. Developers, they focus the game a lot into strength builds, you know, strength is really present in this game. So why this class is advanced? Because this class is focused more on agility, so you need to be careful. What stats should you focus throughout the game? It's a rogue assassin class. You need to focus in agility. Like, you can't run from that, but you need to remember that you won't have a huge posture damage, so you need to go close range, attack, and run away. What do you need for that to happen? You need stamina, because imagine if you attack and you have low stamina, you scratch the enemy armor, you know, they will beat the shit out of you, they will make you fall, and you won't be able to run away. That is humiliating. That you feel like you don't matter in the game. Try to avoid that, you know. Try to feel like you matter, and try to feel that you are a really fast-paced, careful shadow guy. And don't forget to invest points into vitality. So what is the note from the developer? The Stalker is a stylish daredevil that appeals to many, since it is the epitome of confidence and martial artistry. A deadly dervish of death with poison blades. That being said, it is a very demanding class. Its lengthy combos can land the players in hot water quite often. If you understand how a Soulsborne Souls-like game performs, you know the risks, go for it. But if you are a newcomer, be careful, you might get... Now let us move on to the Udirangr Warwolf. This guy is like the wolf pelt badass berserker barbarian guy, you know. I really enjoy that. I mean, regarding my opinion, this is the best class. This is my class. This class, of course, you will start with a long sword, throwing axes, medium armor, and fire salt. You will be able to apply fire salts into your swords. Basically, you need to focus on strength, you know, and stamina, the way I mentioned before, for you to have more damage and to carry a heavy load, because like this type of sword is really heavy. You have a decent defense, but remember, it is medium armor. Don't forget to invest your points into vitality, and always remember, you can indeed create some hybrid builds as well. What is the note from the developer? The Warwolf is the barbarian archetype. Fur-clad berserker, no shield, all in, devastating, wide, sweeping attacks, and really handy axes to throw. This class fulfills that melee glass cannon fantasy. With a little bit of radiance or infernal magic, you can learn buffing war cries to further deepen the fantasy. That is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the 3 schools of magic, you know, radiance, infernal, and umbral, and use that to my benefit so that I can apply all the 3 types of damage in different situations. I really enjoy that strength, all power Thor-like. I mean, Thor, you know. You can see that I love Thor, you know. I really enjoy the fact that you have that Viking build with like elemental or different types of power, divine or infernal powers. Once again, please let me know what class are you going to choose in Lords of the Fallen. I really want to know what is your style of combat, what is your style of gameplay. Comment here below if you're like a safe guy, if you want to go close range and beat everyone with huge swords, or go close range with, like, I don't know, smaller swords or weapons. If you like magic the way I do, if you like hybrid builds, I really want to know what is your opinion, okay? Thank you so much and see you on the next video. Goodbye.